We are back with the Fox News alert on mounting tensions between the U.S. and North Korea as we learn that Pyongyang can now produce miniaturized nuclear warheads that could fit on missiles. Reports claiming the U.S. estimates the North has up to 60 nuclear weapons in its arsenal, and a new threat aimed at over 160,000 people living on the U.S. island territory of Guam. That is raising some concerns about security options available and how likely we are to use them. Gordon Chang is an Asia analyst and the author of the book Nuclear Showdown: North Korea Takes on the World. Gordon, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You actually think that some of the rhetoric that we've heard in the past couple of days is actually directed at China, not North Korea. Is that right?
Yes, this fire and fury comment, that was really directed, of course, to North Korea because that's reinforcing the message of deterrence, but it's also directed at the Chinese because, you know, we have seen that President Trump from June 20 on in that famous tweet has started to really be concerned about what the Chinese are doing. And so there's been a lot of diplomacy with regard to Beijing. We saw that with, for instance, not going forward with the Section 301 trade investigation of China's intellectual property acts and a number of other things, but also, Melissa, it was significant that today, in that two-part tweet from President Trump, he says that no country will ever be stronger than the United States. That's not a message directed to North Korea. The only country that could be directed to is, of course, China. So I think that that fire and fury, that's really directed to the Chinese and saying, look, if you don't do anything, you're going to have a war on your doorstep.
Another expert on this show said that they thought that China would only get involved at the very last minute. Do you agree with that? And what do you think the last minute would be?
Well, China will get involved when the United States imposes such costs on it that it has no choice but to help us. So, for instance, you know, President Trump did sever a small fry Chinese bank from the global banking system, Bank of Dandong. He did that on June 29th. But he hasn't gone after the big Chinese banks like Bank of China, which was named in a 2016 UN report for devising and operating a money laundering scheme. And if we go back down 5 blocks on 6th Avenue here, we're going to see a Bank of China branch. And the question is, why are they still operating here when they're helping North Korea in ways that are abusing the U.S. financial system? So President Trump hasn't gone after them yet. And so I think that essentially here we've got a number of things that the U.S. can do to push China in the right direction. We just haven't done them yet.
Do you think that that kind of pressure, though, do we still have that kind of time? If you're talking about economic pressure on China, or does it have to be that we move weapons into the area, that it looks like we are really ready to move in terms of the military, that's when China finally steps in? Yeah,
I think that certainly when we start reinforcing our forces on South Korea, 28,500 troops there, once we start putting in more people, then of course the Chinese are going to take a look at it. And especially with the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, which is based in South Korea, which the Chinese just hate because they think that it degrades their deterrent. So there's all sorts of things the U.S. can do. But we do have time, Melissa, because, you know, the Defense Intelligence Agency said it'll take about a year for the North Koreans to be able to mount a nuke on a missile that can reach the American homeland.
You have confidence in that kind of precision? I mean, most people say we're really doing, it's mostly guesswork in terms of how far along they are.
Well, it is guesswork because North Korea is so opaque, but we can see things and see their progress. And so, you know, it's going to be maybe a few months off. Now, of course, they were a couple years off just a couple months ago when they were talking 3 or 4 years. But obviously now with their accelerated testing, they've been able to compress that time frame. So, but we do have time. And clearly the United States has those tools that can go after China. We've got an economy which is more than twice the size of, or about twice the size of theirs. We can push them around.
We'll see. All right, Gordon Chang, thank you so much.